Welcome, everybody. Yay! Welcome. For starters, happy Tu B'Shvat, everybody. Baruch Hashem. For everyone who's on Zoom, you guys are missing out on a gorgeous and delicious table. We are here for yet another incredible life skill series. As we do at Living Chassidus, our goal is to make Chassidus practical and relevant and make it alive for all of us. And through that, we take care of the Chassidus aspect. So we do lots of farbrengins and lots of shirim. And my husband teaches a daily morning 15-minute shir that everyone can join. It's on Zoom. It's not intimidating. And you can jump in at any time. Sometimes I'm not able to hear all of them, and I still jump in the next time, and I'm able to join right in. So don't be intimidated by the fact that you missed a few. And all the recordings are up. Baruch Hashem. Yes, it's very exciting right now. He's going through Kuntra Samayan. So yes, it's really, really cool. But part of it, we do Chassidus and classes and farbrengins. And the other side of living Chassidus is the living aspect. So one of the main parts of our living aspect of living Chassidus is our life skill series, where we bring all kinds of amazing speakers to help women reach stages in their lives where they can say, or they shouldn't need to say, I wish somebody would have told me. I wish somebody would have told me about going through stages in life. I wish somebody would have told me about pregnancy. I wish somebody would have told me about pelvic floor. I wish somebody would have told me about alignment, postpartum, nursing, all kinds of topics. And that's what we do here. So tonight, we have the great zchus of having a really good friend of mine, Baruch Hashem, and I'm so overjoyed that she agreed to speak for us. Her name is Mrs. Yedida Wolfe. She is a wife and a mother of 4. She lives in Crown Heights, where she serves as the assistant principal of Benos Menachem High School General Studies Department. She's also a freelance journalist who dabbles in playwriting. And Mrs. Wolfe enjoys hosting Shabbos meals and farbrengins for her students, friends, and family. She's also one of our favorite Shabbos Gems families. So thank you for hosting all the Living Chassidus members, and I pass the mic on to you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, there's a mic. Wow. Yeah. Okay, that's like very professional. Okay. How do I put it on? Like here? Like how do I do it? Yeah. Well, like in the bottom of the wherever.
What do I do?
Like there? Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's not a problem. If you don't mind me,
No, I help. I appreciate it. Okay, amazing. Okay, I just want to. It's so beautiful. The spread is so beautiful, and I'm so happy to be here with all of you. And this year is dedicated to Nishmas. The salad. Your grandmother. Yeah.
Can you also announce?
Meher Neshama have an aliyah.
And then it's also sponsored in honor.
Oh, it's sponsored in honor of the wedding of
Menachem
Mendel ben
Ada Rus.
Ada
Rus.
Yeah.
And Vega Basrivka.
Okay, everyone, we should only have simchas. And wow, I'm just really excited to be here. I love Michal. I remember when I first met you, and that was like actually a different phase of my life. But so I've had a few experiences lately that made me really passionate about this topic. Maybe I'll tell you first what got me a little excited about this topic. But recently, it happened twice in this past year, Baruch Hashem, that I was asked to speak at an event that felt really out of my comfort zone, and it was like very big, and I didn't really feel necessarily so comfortable. Whatever, just really a growth moment. And from being asked to do that, I had this epiphany that it wasn't so much that I was like, okay, going to come up and be like fully prepared and do everything perfectly. Afterwards, I said, oh my goodness, I need to make a chlata. I want to get better in this. I want to be stronger in this area. I want to know more about it. So I recently also Motzi Shabbos spoke at the Nishei event for Yud Shvat, and I said, okay, now that I said what I could know then, now I need to work in deepening my scholarship to the Rebbe. And so because it's Chamisha Aser B'Shvat, so it made me realize that, when we think about this time, the Rebbe speaks so often about our potential. And, the man is the tree of the field. So like we have strong roots, and it's that combination. What are the roots? It's like faith and commitment. And I think that for me, it's only looking backwards. I'm going to tell you a lot about my life and how I came to be here, but I don't know. I'm curious what you guys will think about it. But so much about this, like kind of this, okay, kind of taking a leap and then being like, okay, I'll do it, and then seeing what happens. And so I'll tell you where I'm from. I'm not from Crown Heights originally. No one ever thinks I'm from Crown Heights originally. And I don't say all the right things there. I don't know all the pronunciations my kids have. But you know, I'm really, really honored to live here now. But I was born in Los Angeles, California, and my father was in the music business. Actually, he was a songwriter and music producer of a certain genre of music. And he, I didn't know it at the time because like he drove a Toyota and we like shopped at Walmart. I didn't know that he was like making music and discovering artists. I really didn't know that. I knew that the second floor of his house was all records. He had one of the 10 largest record collections in the world. And it was just, I don't know, it was like this random room that just had all his guitars and a lot of records and, you know, his old high school yearbooks. So, so anyway, so that's my father. And it's really, really interesting because he always said, like, you know, do what you love and keep doing it. But he seemed to me a little bit like at the moment, I didn't understand, you know, his passion and kind of how that led him to his life choices. And my mother, she worked for IBM. It was like the late 1970s. And so she was trained to be a preschool teacher. And then all these big companies were hiring women. And so she worked in that field. So I went to public school growing up. And, you know, at some point we moved to like, whatever, I went to public school. My mother wasn't so happy with the public school environment. She said, it's not so wholesome. And I feel like, you know, you should be in a different school. So there was this kid in my Hebrew school class who went to this private school that was like in the next town over, basically. And I had no idea what I was getting into. Like, you know, I told my family, I didn't even know, like, whatever. You know, my mother worked, you know, my parents seemed just regular. And suddenly I'm in this private school where people are like coming to school in like limousines and Rolls Royces, and they have yachts. and they were like, what does your father do? And I'm like, I don't know, like, why are you asking me that? Like, you know, and it was this really, really uncomfortable environment. My father actually was very against it. He was like, we're liberal LA Jews. You do not go to private school. But whatever. Okay. So, but actually, part of the reason I went there is that I faced a lot of anti-Semitism in the public school where I was. Like, kids would not sit next to me because I was Jewish. They were other religions, and they would invite me for sleepover Saturday night and like try to bring me to their, you know, places of worship. And so anyway, a lot of factors went into this, but so I went to that school for 2 years, and then I went on a trip, but I didn't really love it because I was really studious, and most of the kids there were really really good at like volleyball. Maybe they were like models, you know, they would have like these, like I went to like a 7th grade class party, you know, there was like a house with like an elevator. We just lived in a simple, like, you know, 2-3 bedroom ranch house, like in a regular place. And so this was just really, I was really surprised. And I rather than feeling, I mean, probably I was like, well, I need the fancy brands or whatever, you know, but I remember feeling like a certain lack of meaning and a certain like, I don't belong here. And so instead of I tried to become better at volleyball. I mean, I could play a pretty good game of volleyball, especially for New York. And I did like swim team and stuff, but I really, really loved school. And so one summer I went with my grandmother to Boston, Massachusetts, and we were driving all around the East Coast, and we land in this town. We're like getting gas in this town of, it's called Lawrence, Massachusetts. Next door is a town called Andover, Massachusetts. And it's the place of the oldest prep school in the entire United States. So for example, it was founded by George Washington's nephew. And my mother, well, just to fast forward, I ended up going to school there. I applied because I was like, I don't want to stay in this boring. I mean, now I go there with my kids. I'm like, it's beautiful. You can sail a little boat around the harbor. Like, why did I want to leave? But I really didn't like it there. I didn't know at the time that was like my neshama being like, you need something more than this, you know? I didn't know that, I don't know, I had a lot of different people and types of people in my family, and the spirituality that I was exposed to from all different places just like wasn't. I mean, my parents laugh. Like my mother would be like, if I would have a hard time. My father basically, I loved Hebrew school so much. My father was like, you're either going to become a rabbi or marry a rabbi. So, and I didn't know at the, whatever. So I go to the East Coast and I apply to this super prestigious, hard to get into school. And I mean, I got in, which was so surprising to my parents and to me. And they were like, even though my father was in the music business, it wasn't like doing rock music. It was like he did well, but it wasn't like, okay, it's a lot of money to send some. My mother was like, how are we going to pay for it? But anyway, so they've supported me to go on this crazy adventure from home. So whenever people say to me, oh, you sent your son away to yeshiva, I was like, oh, I didn't send him. He's just like me. He told me where he's going and what he wants to do about it. And Ezra Hashem, that should be good for him. But for me, it was really, I had no idea what I was getting into. My mother either. Like, we go to the parent orientation and she's sitting next to, her name is Carol, and she's sitting next to this guy. He's like, I'm Nathan Hale the Eighth. Like, that's a history guy. She's like, whoa, okay, nice to meet you. Very nice to meet you. I think the sports team, it was like Teddy Roosevelt the Eighth. And I guess it was like the 8th generation of down. But, there was a guy who, like the Princess of Nigeria, and then me. Like from my little place, in Irvine, California. Okay. So I really didn't. Anyway, so there was this girl in my dorm, and she was the president of the Jewish Student Union. And her name is Kira. She was then Kira Goldstein. And she was like, you should come. And I was like, why? Like, I'm busy. I'm in writings, poetry, like taking walks in the woods, yay. And I didn't really want to associate, especially because I had such hard experiences growing up. Before then, I didn't really want to do anything Jewish. Actually, I really didn't want to. And she was really interesting. She grew up in a family, her family sort of kept Shabbos, or maybe they do keep Shabbos fully, but her father had gone to Andover, so she would like come to choir practice but not sing. She would go to class but not write. And I was like, whoa, like I never really knew anyone my age like that before, like, or where my family was really reformed and not doing those things.
I mean, she wouldn't write on
Shabbos, like, we had class on Saturday. Sorry. Yeah, we had class on Saturday, and she would come to class and not write. Or if we were singing a non-Jewish, I was 15, 16, 15. Yeah. And so it was like classical music mostly, like Handel, Israel in Egypt, actually. Maybe she could have sang that. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. Or sometimes the choir was called the cantata choir, and they did usually mostly classical choirs. We actually like toured Italy. I had like all this. What? You would sing? I would sing. I love to sing. I didn't get into the super exclusive choir. I'm still. No, I'm kidding. It was a madrigal choir that was like a cappella, and they would sing this other style of music from the Middle Ages. But yeah, I love to sing. But my father, I love my father. Oh, Shalom, he's a great guy. He said, you're not that great at music, but you are pretty good at writing. So at least that, right? So anyway, so this was my first, Kira Goldstein. So we're there, and I guess I found out like only 5 years ago that someone in Crown Heights had grown up in Andover, and that year, which was 1991, she actually printed a Tanya in the Andover bookshop, which is where we bought all of our textbooks. And Kira became fully Shomer Shabbos and Shomer Kashrus and everything. And so did this girl, Sharon, who was the daughter of Holocaust survivors. And her husband learned full-time in the Mir, and she lives in Ramat Shlomo in Israel. And my kids who went to Machon Shoshana Yerushalayim actually spent Shabbos meals by her. And then when my mother's like, where are your kids again in Israel? I'm like, they're my friend from Andover lives there. Like, we're good. Yeah. So anyway, so then how did so that's some of the interesting things that I experienced, growing up. And after living in the small town of Andover, it's not really that small, but coming from LA, I felt like I was living in the middle of nowhere. It was like this pretty country town, but it was like super boring in my opinion. So I wanted to come to New York, and I applied to 2 colleges in New York, and I got into both of them. And I really wanted to write a novel for all my 4 years of college, and my parents said no. So I chose an all women's college in Upper Manhattan. That's part of Columbia University, and Barnard, called whatever. And what's cool about it is that so many of my fellow first year students were had grown up Shomer Shabbos and had gone to day school.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So there I'm at Barnard, and we're studying our science requirement. And we're like, where did you go to high school? Because we're like now little first years. And they're like, I was like, I went to Phillips Andover, and they're like, what's that? I'm like, what's Ramaz? Like, I don't know. Anyway, so over the 4 years of college, they invited me back to their homes in New Jersey, mostly Teaneck, Englewood, New Jersey, Fair Lawn, New Jersey. And so that's really how I got here today. But it was, whatever. There was actually no Chabad on campus yet there. And so it's really funny. I think like Chabad on campus is so powerful, because I really thought, and you're going to laugh at this because we're sitting here in the middle of Crown Heights, but I thought I was like the first person to come up with this idea of having grown up in a Reform Jewish / everything else environment, and like try to become Orthodox, and somebody was like, well, my mom kind of like was conservative, sort of, but she always kept Shabbos. I was like, I literally thought I was like original. And I would go to people's homes and be like, Frisch, Ramaz, the other one, some Riverdale school, and then it'd be like Andover, yeah, okay, whatever, Andover. It's funny because it's sad, because really it was such a challenging and powerful experience to have that type of education. And but when I first became religious, I didn't know what to do with it. I just so much wanted to fit in. And I so much thought, why does it matter that I went to Andover? I didn't learn how to learn. I'm like 20 years old, and I'm like stumbling over pronouncing things that I'd go to school and just kind of like watch what they're doing, And it was such a humbling experience, especially Andover. It's like, you're the future leaders of the world. You're going to now go run Goldman Sachs and, all the news stations and whatever. And many of the kids that I grew up with did end up with really prominent and lucrative careers. And that's what my parents were hoping for me, of course. So at the end of my 4 years of college, they weren't really too worried that I was keeping kosher and keeping Shabbos, because so did all my friends, and their parents seemed to have normal jobs, and it's not like they wore a sheitel or anything, or like, they didn't look too different, right? Okay, it's a little annoying with the kosher food, okay, like whatever, makes it harder, but they weren't necessarily clued into where this was heading, and and probably neither was I, to be honest. So fast forward a couple of years after college, and so my first job, actually, I decided all the way by college, joined the kosher meal plan, and I decided that I will keep Shabbos and I will keep kosher, like, going out into the workforce. And so I was in marketing for, it was like I guess it sounds so long ago now, like 20 years ago, but at the time it was like the .com era, and so I did marketing for technology companies, and I had to travel all over the world. So I would, I'd do trade shows in Frankfurt, Germany. I would go to Columbus, Ohio, like Texas, Chicago. I know where you guys are from.
Come on,
I mean, I know where you're from, actually. That's how I know you. Thank you. Montreal is in the house. So anyway, I traveled a lot, and everywhere I went, like Chabad would feed me. So actually,
That's their job.
Yeah, I called Chabad in Frankfurt like very, very hungry, and the Gurevich family, who I now have taught their daughter, so that's very cool, brought me yogurt, and yeah, so that was really, really amazing. So when I was introduced to my now husband, So over that time, I kind of transitioned from like more just like YU style, like from modern Orthodox, like Black Hat modern Orthodox, to super Litvish, because there was no Chabad on campus yet. So there was this night seminary in Manhattan, and I would take classes there. And I got really close with this really special Rebbetzin, Mrs. Leah Cohn. Her husband is the Av Beis Din of Breuers. So, I would, whatever, that was like my frame of reference. And nevertheless, my 20s were marching on, and I wasn't really, I wasn't really in a framework like Crown Heights where anyone was introducing me to any, and certainly not any normal shidduch prospects, to be honest. And, yeah. And I just remember thinking, like, I had this apartment, and I just remember being like, whatever. I just remember feeling, is this ever going to happen for me? So basically, when someone called me up with this idea of my now husband, it was a little out of my comfort zone to become Chabad, or like to date someone Chabad, because I was like, it was also much closer to Gimel Tammuz, and there was like a lot of more whatever stuff and books and whatever. And I had friends that were like Rosh Yeshiva in like places that weren't necessarily so excited about Chabad yet. And but I thought everything else about it made sense. And I spoke to them. I was living in Manhattan. Yeah. But I spent a lot of time with this really special family, Rabbi Benjamin Yudin in Fairlawn, New Jersey. I'm going to tell you especially about him because he grew up on the block of the Rebbe, and he went to Gan Yisrael growing up. Yeah, and he was the head, I think, at some point, or the Rosh Yeshiva of the YU Smicha program. Wow. Yeah, like a very, very special, holy rabbi. And so he, first, like, whatever. I didn't do it I wasn't just impulsively like, okay, whatever, I spoke to Rabbi Yudin, and he and his wife, they said, we met my husband, and they said, we always wanted a Lubavitch son-in-law because we were so close to Chabad. And he was even written about in Mishpacha magazine, giving over Sichas of the Rebbe, and how he structured his community very much along the lines of Chabad. Yeah. So anyways, I'm taking a long time about the story, but but really, so fast forward, we got married, and we lived on the Upper West Side because he was actually like, don't maybe just move to Crown Heights, maybe like live in New Jersey, like. So we brought, it's just a mutual friend thought of it and suggested it. Actually, someone who, because there was like, I was working in the professional world, and so was my husband. We actually worked for a company that did the same thing. We worked for competing companies. Whoa. And so, isn't that funny? So like, it was really funny. And it was really like a very rare, I'll tell you what it was, logistics management. Do you even know what that is? And shipping. Yeah, it's like software that like helps big companies ship things for the best price. Okay. Wow. So that's not like, and he also worked there. When he's like, what do you do? I was like, oh, I have to explain this. And I was like, I work for a, logistics software company. He's like, me too. I was like, forget it. That's it. Say anything else. No, just kidding. Anyway, so we lived in the Upper West Side in this really, really special, first we had a regular apartment. Then we actually wanted to move to Crown Heights, but like, whatever, we were hosting a lot. And oh yeah, I forgot like all the dramatic parts of the story. I have to go back and just say that part, because I'm sure you know it, or some of you know it, but it's important because it really was, when I explain, I think, where I'm going with all this, it's important. But just to say, so like, I decided while we were dating, so it was Rabbi Yudin approved, which was very important. And he met my husband, and he said, it's good, like you could try, dating. And so anyway, so we got married, but like we basically, part of it was like I became Chabad. I actually met an Aish rabbi who said you cannot have a marriage if he's Chabad and you're not, and you're going to your shul and he's going to his shul. And this guy is a surfing rabbi who grew up in the same town as me, and he told me you have to become Chabad. So I was not just an Aish rabbi, yeah. I don't know what it means, but basically, so you know what that was. So my husband spoke to his mashpia here in Crown Heights, and that was, I got the seal of approval also, like okay, but it was, I had to figure out what does it mean to be Chabad a little bit, like what am I going to take on and what kind of commitment am I going to make to that, right? So it's again like that. Well, I didn't grow up Orthodox, so it had. I mean, it took a lot of, there was a lot of things I wasn't going to do anymore, right? And I think I've spoken even a lot about the sheitel was a really big one, so we're full of sheitel. All my friends had falls, or, just it was like you could have a hat fall, and it was like much more trendy then. It was like all my friends looked like that. And, so it was like a really big statement at the time to wear full sheitel, and also like, what else? Keep Kol Yisrael. So like we couldn't even eat in my Rav's home. Wow. Right? So like it's things you don't think about. Lubavitch Shchita, which like, it's like you're from, but it really, yeah, it was like a different type of thing. So and then the Rav, not the Rav, my husband's mashpia was like, why don't you actually no. One of the shluchim who fed me, along Rabbi Kaltman from Columbus, Ohio, where I took a pit stop for work and stuff, said, why don't you go to Machon Alta? So that's probably would have been an amazing idea, which I'll forever now do tshuva for. Why did I not do that? I feel, but I did not. So if you ever have a friend in this situation, force them to go to seminary, because no, don't force anyone to do anything. That was actually a joke, but you can't force people. No, but I guess what? I don't know. I'm just sharing my own experience, which is to say that I made a lot of money. I made more money then than I make now. Like I've never made as much money as I made then. And the thought of like giving up my really amazing apartment. I guess we were getting married, so we were getting a new apartment anyway, but like I just could not let go of that lifestyle. And I thought, okay, I'll keep Kol Yisrael, I'll get a really nice sheitel, I'll wear whatever it is that's like more Chabad, okay, like I'll buy the right stuff, I'll do it. My husband had been through Morristown and had been through yeshiva, and he was like a really stark bacher at the time. So also like Hilchos Shabbos and like what you can and can't put on the blech is slightly different. So there were some like interesting moments of adjustment and learning curves, which probably if I'd gone to, I was afraid, I'll be honest also, I guess I'm being recorded, but I'll be really honest. What if I went to Machlon Alta and decided I couldn't become Chabad, and I knew I really wanted to marry this person? Mm-hmm. So I decided to have a, what? Not, I just, well, I was really
more committed to him than the.
Yeah, I was more committed to him than the Chabad part. And I knew that I knew I'll do, like, once this Aish rabbi told me I have to become Chabad, and Rabbi Yudin was like, yes, you need to become Chabad, as if it's like this whole other thing. It was different and not different. but so what? No, he grew up like me, but then he just went straight to Chabad. He didn't have this whole nice, long, complicated journey. But anyway, so basically, so we were living on the Upper West Side, and we ended up living in this really holy place with a really holy Rebbe who was a Holocaust survivor, and it was really special. We basically lived under a base medrash, and I literally feel like the terror like just fell into our apartment, just like seeped down. He would like learn day and night and sleep on the benches, and this Rav, even though he was like from the was not Chabad, he was very close with the Rebbe, and the Rebbe had helped him through some really difficult moments in his life. so we would host like these big meals, and we kind of like we joked, we were like Chabad of Aish Torah, because like I had all these Aish friends and like a Manhattan Jewish experience, and they would send us all their guests because I don't know, they're Chabad-ish, like they're Chabad, but she, you know, she comes to all the whatever. I'm working on my class, you know, like all the parenting groups of the. I'm not making fun of it. I learned a lot. Yeah, but anyway, so so eventually though, it came time to move. I had two babies, and I was expecting, and we were living in a 1-bedroom apartment that was the basement of a shul. It was awesome, but it was holy. But at some point, like we needed just a more functional, like, you know, like, you know, Shabbos, like when they would have minyan, like the lights would shake, and it was like, you know, collectors would come day and night and like push the loud buzzer like right next to where my kids slept. It was good, and then it was not good anymore. I mean, it was always good because they're very special people, but anyway, so we got, basically my mashpia at the time told me to, oh, I forgot the whole dramatic part. Okay, I'll tell this part, then I'll go back. Okay, basically my mashpia at the time told me you can move to Crown Heights, but but you have to ask the Rav first for permission, which is funny because he's like our landlord. So anyways, he said, you'll move to Crown Heights, but not now. So we went straight from that basement, and we have now Baruch Hashem a house on Crown Street. Makes like absolutely no sense. And the person that we rented it from then helped us buy it. It was a Black family that helped us.
I love that story.
I know, it's very
It
good.
gives me so much hope.
Yeah, it will work out. It will work out. So I'm just gonna say the dramatic part, and then I want to talk about like how I've come to view the whole thing. It's been unfolding, and you know, but as Hashem, it should continue to unfold. But you know, so just basically, I forgot to say that I got married in the end of June of 2001, the last week, and I had been traveling a lot for work, I think I mentioned. So when I got engaged, I started dating this guy. I said, I'm going to become Chabad, and I need a job that's like not 3 days a week in Boston and 2 days a week just Shabbos in New York. Like that's not a way to start a marriage. So I got a new job the week I got engaged. And so basically I got married, and I came back after Shavuos, and I was laid off, which is a nice way of saying fired. My husband had been in yeshiva and grad school, so I was making very little. I've never made as much money as I made then. I was like, we have to have an apartment in a German building and this whole lifestyle. And Daniel, my husband, he was like, are you sure we need that? I was like, yes, we do. We absolutely do. We're going to be like the Chabad yuppies of the Upper West Side. Anyway, so I was really, really devastated. And I called my mashpia, who's a really special lady in Crown Heights. She was my college teacher. So that was another thing I decided to. Yes, I had a, well, I had a, yeah. Right, so I transitioned from my really holy and special rabbi and his wife to then I got a Chabad college teacher because I was going to be Chabad. And so she was my college teacher, and then I found out about mashpia, and then I was like, will you be my mashpia? And she said yes, and I said, oh yay. But then I was like, but what do I ask you? Besides, you know, so then Hashem, you know, I lost my job, so I called her up and I was like, I lost my job, like that's not cool, you know. It's really devastating. My whole, you know, all these decisions I made not to go to seminary, to have a really expensive lifestyle, to like, you know, do everything, like, but really the gashmius was like very central, I think, at that time, to be honest. And like she told me it's a bracha that I lost my job, and I was like, no. I was like I don't know what you mean, like I really doesn't feel like a blessing. And she was like, you need to work on yourself until you see it's a blessing. And I was like, what does that mean? You know,
seminary and one phone conversation.
Yeah, I was like, before you were just telling me all these nice things, and you know, halachas, and we were having like tea in your living room, and now you're telling me work on myself. Like I was like, okay, I don't know. Okay, this was not okay. So it was a little, you know, that was kind of hard. I hung up, and I was like, I definitely need a different mashpia who's gonna like also get me a job, like, you know. Anyway, so fast forward about. I don't know why I can't ever decide the exact amount of weeks, but my new job had been on the 87th floor of the World Trade Center. And so it was a miracle that I was let go because it was the summer of 2001.
Oh
Yeah, it was June of 2001, and that was 9/11. Yeah, it was. I mean, I was like first week of July that I went back after 4th of July.
What went
Yeah.
through your head? Like, you saw
That's
what was happening,
yeah.
and you're like, whoa, I work on the 87th floor.
Yeah. Well, it was a really, so that day, I was my first pregnancy appointment actually with my daughter. And I was so excited, you know? So I called the doctor and they were like, we don't know, like, should we all go home? Should you come? Like, no one could figure out what to do. Oh, actually before that, my husband called me and he said, and I was like sitting on the couch, like really nauseous, you know? And he's like, you probably shouldn't go to your appointment. And I was like, what do you mean? I have to go, right? Like, this is the most important moment of my life I've ever been waiting for. What do you mean don't go? He's like, well, these planes hit the World Trade Center.
And where was your apartment?
So we lived on 92nd and West End Avenue. And he was that's pretty far.
Okay.
I couldn't, and it was a second floor apartment. Like I couldn't see from my apartment, but he worked on 35th Street in Midtown. And as soon as people heard about it, they mostly ran to the roof and many of them saw the towers fall. And he at the time was like, I think it's a terrorist attack. And his colleagues were like, what are you talking about? That's not a terrorist attack. And so he's like, I don't want to see it. I don't want to go up and see. Isn't that amazing? And then okay, being totally logical, newly pregnant, and just, I don't know, I was like, I have to go to the bank. I don't know. So I ran out of my apartment and ran to the local bank a few blocks away. And all the systems were down. Nothing worked. There was still electricity, and then there was like a little TV in the bank, and that showed the other attacks that were happening simultaneously. So it was very, so you couldn't, like, in order to get money, like the machine it worked, so you had to go to the lady, and so I took out like $200. Like, what was that going to help me? I don't know, but anyways. And then my husband was trained as a social worker, so we walked later in the afternoon. We walked down West End Avenue to where they had a Red Cross center, like for volunteers. And one of the saddest moments of the whole thing is there were so few people that survived, so no one was coming in. Like he was like, I'm going to go help people. Like I could, volunteer to be like a first responder. And it just wasn't needed really. And we were also like the first married of my friends who all lived near me. So we did what we still love to do and like made a huge dinner and invited them all over. And but yeah, it was really emotional. And so anyway, yeah. So after that, I looked for a job, and then I also took the train. Yeah, yeah.
So when you were upset at your mashpia that, how is this a blessing? How did you feel when looking back?
Yeah, I called her. Yes, I did call her. I called her very abashedly, like very humbled. You were right. And I didn't even, I mean, this is embarrassing because I live here now for almost 20 years, but I didn't understand who she was or who her husband was one of the Rebbe secretaries. I didn't understand. Yeah, I didn't understand. Like, we spent Shabbos there. I had no idea. Like, imagine. So, yeah, I really.
That's the best. You were really able to just like start.
Yeah, I called Mrs. Klein and I said, wow. And she just embraced me with the most warm and loving, and she never was like, yeah, no, she didn't do that. Yeah. So she's a really special lady. And then, so actually from that whole experience, I said, maybe the job, I kept applying for jobs, but I mentioned expecting, and I got turned down for a lot of them, especially as I started to show. And I was either going to be like litigious, like sue everyone, or like maybe go to Mahon Kana at the time, like on Crown Street. That was like, I don't know. Like, that's really like discrimination, but maybe I should just go learn Torah and Chassidus. I don't know. So Baruch Hashem, I chose the learning option. Although we're maybe, no, don't think that. Yeah, so I did take some classes while I was expecting my oldest daughter, Sarah. I commuted back and forth, and then there was some really amazing classes. Esther Tversky, who I also didn't know who she is, or that, like, I was like, I think she's a Lubavitcher. Like, she gave this Shir that she gives in Sundays that I make now. My second daughter is in her shir. Like everyone has to take it. I took that class. Like the only Chabad thing I did before I was married. So anyway, so yeah, it was a very special experience. And I took classes. I took her class, and there was like other classes happening on the Upper West Side then. Eventually, we moved to Crown Heights, and I've been thinking a lot about it. I moved when I was expecting my third child, so we lived there for 4 years. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it's really, really interesting because I've only recently started. I was sharing some of the details of this with my really good friend, and I never noticed or understood how all these things were connected. I knew at some point, like especially when it came to Crown Heights, and I saw so many other people who had similar life stories to me, and that really amazing feeling of not being alone and not being the only person who ever thought of this idea, this feeling of belonging, and this feeling of my neighbor who I love. I have a chavrusa with her every week. She's like, "Oh, well, you're the Rebbe's people." I was like, "What do you mean? Like the Rebbe's people? Like I don't know." It was this sense of like being wanted and being like, there's a place for me here. Even I'm not saying every moment of moving to Crown Heights was easy. There were a lot of really hard times, and I cried, and I called Mrs. Ornstein, my old neighbor, and she got me through it. But but I think what I've found so surprising is that now that I lived here for almost 20 years, I see I'm learning to look backwards and see the different moments where the Rebbe was like kind of bringing me here, and Hashem needed me here. And I think this concept of being needed and making the most of like the moment that I'm in has become, it's like my new current favorite theme, because I also like my kids are growing up and they're starting their new lives, and it's really interesting because I remember being in my 20s and thinking like, what am I going to do? And this thing of like, whatever I'm going to do is going to be like really defining me. And I'll also, Be'ezras Hashem, have a family, and that will be like my two like identities. And it felt like very, very permanent, and I thought like, right, I wouldn't even give up my job to go to seminary. Imagine. I mean, how much money was it already? Like, at the end of the day, fine, and a gym membership. Who cares? You know what I mean? It wasn't even a kosher gym. Like, what? But like really, I think that, but if I look back, so, each phase is part of what I've come to really value. Like for, that kind of, desire I had to move on of like, oh, this was a kind of tough part of my life. Maybe I don't need to think about that or talk about that, or I just want to move on from it. So I've started to feel more like actually that was like such an important part of the whole picture. And I think like, for example, when I was at Andover, I mean, there was like a whole other level. Like I didn't know Atani was being printed. I didn't know, when I was growing up, we would drive at the same time as the mitzvah tank to the kids from Irvine to Long Beach School. It's really Huntington Beach, whatever, Silver Gun Izzy, the camp. So, there would be like a mitzvah tank with a Rebbe picture driving. And my mother, when I first moved to Crown Heights, or we first put up a Rebbe picture, she's like, we used to commute with a bus that had that man's picture on it, And so it's funny because at the time, I didn't know that, right? So there's a whole other level, I'm sure, but just from my very limited human understanding, if I hadn't have gone to Andover, maybe like I wouldn't be wanting to make electives, this whole big program in the high school where I work, and bring in like top self-defense, first aid, creative writing. Maybe I wouldn't have had maybe the skills or confidence to teach English, in this setting. So I think we could look back at it like both on like the spiritual plane, but also just practically, so like it felt when I lost my job and then I literally couldn't figure out another job. And we were literally, I paid the rent then. My husband had been in yeshiva, he'd been in social work school. He made like less than half of what I made at that time, I believe. And, we were struggling to pay our rent. It was really, really stressful. And I remember thinking like, why did my parents, it's probably my parents were even wondering, like, we sent you to school, like, you should figure it out, right? Like most people do. And, you know, I was really kind of I had 3 little girls in a row, and I just couldn't quite get my head above water with that. Like, and also I was raising them to be frum. So it was like this whole new skill set and this whole new language and this whole new rhythm to my life. I didn't, for a while, that whole like school, college, corporate career was really on hold. And I think I worried, or I sort of felt like, will it ever serve me? Like, why did I have to go through that? Why did my neshama need to be like in that really difficult public school situation, in a really stressful, interesting, dynamic, but like out of my comfort zone high school situation? You know, why did I have to go through all these experiences, which I don't even necessarily know how to feel proud of? You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I did that, and at the time I felt good about it, but where does it fit with my life today? And so it's interesting, like when I'm thinking about like what could I think we started out talking about like growth, and it's like, you know, each time, like if I look back at it, so like maybe I wasn't working in the field that I thought I would, or using all my writing skills or things like that. But you know, my research, my drive and like research experience, like I went to every parenting class. I read like I'm not saying people should do that, but for me, I was an only child, you know, who really didn't grow up with like family dynamics like that. I'd gone to boarding school. So like to master those time of home-based, family-oriented perspectives took time and effort. And it was something that I needed to fully invest myself in. Then when I did that, I remember thinking, oh, my brain, will it ever wake up that like I'll ever do anything again besides like make dinner and go to the park and, you know, figure out how to get that one to sleep and stay in her bed, and that one, you know, I don't know, it was like a juggling act, you know. But I remember thinking like, will my brain ever, why did I have whatever cover? That's arguable. No. But I would, you know, but then, so it's amazing because
Mommy brain is a real thing.
yeah, it is. Exactly. It is. And
Will it ever wake up again?
Yeah. And so it's funny because as I was going through each thing, even I was thinking recently, the Rebbitzin where we lived on the Upper West Side, you know, when we lived there, I didn't realize like how special it was. You know, it was like we were living with these Torah giants who learned Torah night and day, and like just to be in their positive presence and their beautiful like thoughts about children, you know. And I don't think we can always appreciate every moment, but like I think more like rather than be afraid, like the thing I want to go to hasn't happened yet, you know, whether that's marriage or whether that's a job or whether that's a baby or whatever it is. Like now I'm, you know, in my second, you know, I've married one kid off, so we're going in that direction, you know. But it's like, you know, I think women have this amazing kind of, if we could, like for myself, when I remember to be flexible and be like, okay, so like this is the phase that I'm in now. What does Hashem need for me now? Why am I here where I am now? What can I do with it? Like, how can I invest? I just learned like, you know, the Parshas Pinchas, like really invest my machshava dibur maisa, like really where I am at that moment. And what's funny about it is I have to fully invest where I am, and it's going to change. I know it's going to change. It's not going to stay the same. So, you know, then at some point, for all of, you know, I don't know, like at some point when my kids got a little older, someone was like, oh, you know what? I need a magazine writer for a business column. And I was thinking, business, I know about business. I could do that. And I tried it. And then it was like my favorite thing, writing and business. And I was able to start the business column of Omni Magazine. And I did that for 7 years. You know, and then I started Women in Business column, which I don't know if it still exists now, but I wrote a lot of Truth or Consequences for people. I wrote a lot of whatever the other one at the end is called. I forgot what it's called. Not Our Stories, but I forgot what it's called. So, you know, at some point my kids were old enough and I have like a lot of energy, and I, you know, my brain woke up enough to be like, no, you could write, which is something I always wanted to do. And I could let go of the goshiness and all the fear, like, would people think I'm successful? And fear, would people, like, what do they think of me? Will my parents be satisfied? Will my, you know, and just put like the parnasa aspect in Hashem's hands a little bit, and just do the next thing that made sense. And what I find so miraculous is like this whole concept of like, okay, like faith and commitment, like, and those are the roots. So it's like every time that I've been like, I don't know. I feel like it happens. So it's happened to me at least 5 times where it's like something isn't working. And when does the next, like I need the next, very urgently need the next thing to happen. It happened to me, you know, when I was waiting for my husband, and it was so hard for so many reasons. And it happens to me then, you know, with this whole job thing was a really hard thing. And I was the main provider. And it was so hard to ask my parents, like, okay, like help, like we can't pay the rent, you know, and really feeling that they were probably not so happy about that. They were very supportive and they always did help us. But, you know, it wasn't where I expected to be at that time. And struggling in ways that were just, you know, whatever. So like surprising. And then I felt like when I've been able to kind of go back to what does Hashem need for me and what can I, you know, what can I do where I am? Sometimes the opportunities or what it like, you know, depending on which stage it is, but sometimes opportunities that are surprising arise, you know? So like after living here and doing journalism, it was good, but it was like I would get the stories at midnight. Okay, like basically Matzah Shabbos would be Matzah Shabbos, and I would have to submit, like I would have to do all this research on the latest news for Aminizing, like between like let's say whenever Shabbos ended at midnight, and then the story, the whole page of stories was due at noon the next day. So I was able to do it, and then I was too tired, and my husband was like, "You're exhausted." It was really when I turned 40. He was like, you don't realize, like you might not realize like how tired you are and how it's affecting all of us, you know. But it was hard to give it up, you know. I like learned to do it, and you know, and I did a lot of lunch breaks also. And I remember one moment where I just thought, this is so not manageable. It was this billionaire guy, millionaire or whatever, and he I chased him for 3 months, and he called me to do the interview, finally, the phone interview, Erev Shabbos, 2:30 p.m. on a short winter Friday. Okay, I'm like trying to finish cooking. My kids are banging, "Mommy, we need you," whatever. The cholent is burning or whatever else, you know. And I'm like, "I'm sorry, just let me tell me about the amazing deal and your whole life story, you know." And then I just remember hanging up the phone and being like, why did I, why? Like, you know, and so I think sometimes in our, like, I think like what I'm trying to do now is rather than be like afraid of that feeling of like, this epic is over, this is not working, and kind of either just like bracing myself to, I mean, I still have to, listen, we still have to show up, but sometimes it's a transition moment where it's like, okay, I know this is not working. I don't know what the next thing is yet. It's not like the next day I wake up and it's like, oh yeah, here's the job promotion. And, you know, it's not usually like that, but I do think that like, for me, it became a really spiritual practice to, rather than to just like allow myself, like, this is not working and I don't know what I'm going to do next. And I don't know, like, it's a really awkward transition. It's not necessarily like so smooth, but to rather be like, okay, so where do I need to grow next? What is the next thing I need to learn? You know, where can I, you know, and so sometimes, like, so from journalism, I got offered a job teaching English and I was terrible the first year. I had a student, I'm not going to scare you, but, you know, I had a student pour glitter on our whole row of other students. That was hard.
Yeah.
And it was so different for my high school, you know, like whatever. You know, but whatever. So but I think, you know, in those moments, even where I feel like I'm failing and I don't feel successful and I don't feel necessarily like, oh yeah, I just, you know, and don't we all want to look and feel like I just got it made, you know, I have life all figured out, right? But for me, when I've started to just accept that, you know, when I've been in hard, different situations, whether it's like relationship situations or work situations, it's like, okay, so I didn't learn that lesson yet, you know, and I keep, okay, so I need to, that's like such a punishing way to say it. Sorry, what's a more positive way? Like, there's still more for me to do here, right? There's more that I need to do, and I can be like both here and like, I'm excited for the next thing to reveal itself. So I think it's like that kind of tension of like, and I'm not saying, you know, so I guess whatever, just this concept of that I'm really excited about, which is, you know, I don't know, I recently took a Tanya class with Chaya Shucha, which I loved. And she was talking about like how the midas, when it's the 7 midas, exist like in their wholeness, like all together in a unified way. And I think like, when I'm doing things that are towards Kedusha and holiness. So like I started to think about that, also about the aspects of my life or things that I could work on. So it's like, rather than feel like conflicting or, like hard on myself, I can be like, okay, how can I bring this quality that I want to have, or this experience, or, something about my past, to like help me and give me strength. Because if I think about some of the decisions, like, even though, you could say, okay, my way that I grew up was so different. And I think about it because I work in high school now, right? So I became, after teaching, I eventually, the amazing assistant principal who I adore is like one of my favorite people. She moved on to a different MESED. And it was during COVID and I stepped into that role. And, it's really interesting because basically, what was I thinking? In high school, a lot of times I feel like it's really easy to feel like wherever I am, like somewhere else is going to be like so much better. And certain things in life are objectively true. If I don't have this and I do need that, yes, that is a lack. That's a true lack. But sometimes, like, something that's not necessarily like a life, situation. Like if I'm not yet married, or I don't yet have kids, or I don't have a job and I need it, and I don't have parnasa, whatever it is, like there is a true lack. But sometimes, I feel like sometimes students think, well, if as soon as I get out of high school, I could do whatever I want. I could have total freedom. Like I'm not gonna have the school like with their phone filter on there, and I'm not gonna have to wear whatever it is that I do or don't have to wear, and there's a sense of like it's either like total restriction or like values. And I think about it like, so when I was thinking about also today, like the 15th of Shvat, it's so powerful because like we're celebrating the trees before they've bloomed, really. And it's like so powerful. We're not like we're eating the fruit and we're celebrating it, but like it didn't grow yet, really. It's not fully done. And I think about my mother. So like, my father won some Grammys when I was 16 years old, which are big music awards, right? And platinum records. And I could have gone to the Grammy party. My social status, I don't know. How exciting, right? Like my mother said, absolutely not. There is no way that the Grammys or the Grammy parties and meeting every pop star you ever wish to know, there is no way that is a wholesome choice for you. I was like, really? I don't think I agree with you. I think I want to be cool. And so it's interesting because I think like, I don't know, I'm really excited right now about this time and like recently where I've been just doing these things which are really not comfortable for me. Like I don't usually even like to tell this story. And I'm like, I was recently asked a few times and I said, you know what, okay, like whatever, maybe, if there's something that I could share that's important or powerful to someone else, but like also like it's like just grow, just like do the next thing and like be out of my comfort zone. And it doesn't necessarily have to have blossomed yet, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like perfect in its entirety yet. And so I think like I don't know, so and yeah, whatever, just each time I just remember feeling like, okay, this is the only thing that will ever be. I will always be single forever. I will always be a mother of tiny children forever, and I will never be able to think again, and I will never be able to work again, and I will never be able to use the bathroom without someone knocking on the door, like, yeah. And I will, or sleep through the night, right. And I was not a good, I feel like you guys just, yeah. Yeah. And it's so funny because I feel like now they have all these like, I know I'm on these people's statuses, like I do sleep magic lady. I'm like, wow, we did not have it. And my mother was like, in your day, we just let them cry. And I was like, I can't do it. Yeah. I know. In my 20 years ago, they were,
That wasn't what people did. They just let their children cry it out.
Yeah. So exactly. So anyways, so I guess those are some of the thoughts I was thinking about and the thing that I'm really, really very interested in now, and is like just kind of being in the stage, and then also like allowing for that moment of like, I guess, faith, which is risky, like allowing something new to happen, and allowing it not to be perfect the first time, and allowing myself to, I always thought it will be linear. Like I will get married, I will have a job in technology, and I will be successful. I'll have a nanny, and I'll do this, this, and this, and and then I feel like Hashem, in the most miraculous way, was kind of like deconstructed the whole thing. Like actually, right? And I was really upset, like when I lost my job. I'm like talking about it now. It was so long ago. It's hard to remember. I almost forgot to tell that part, right? But like at the time, we couldn't pay the rent. Like it was very stressful, and I didn't know how would we ever get out of it? You know what I mean? Would we ever get out of it? And I think that like, yeah. So like, I think what's unusual about that aspect is it's the only time that I ever had such a situation where like the fear and the scary situation was there, and then the result was so obvious, right? Like usually most experiences in life are more mundane, and it seems more natural. Like, oh, I happened to go to this Farbrengen, and this lady who had a magazine job was there, and I happened to take it, and then I happened to, someone knew I was a writer, and then happened to think of English, but it wasn't like so dramatic or so like life changing. And yeah, so I think like also just been really helpful for me to like think about like the emunah and bitachon part is important, and then like that commitment, like, okay, I'm taking the next step like into the abyss of, I don't know. How did I keep it? I mean, it's an ongoing, right? Yeah, and we had like crazy times. Like one time we got this, like we were really tight, and we host also here in Crown Heights, and I was like, how are we gonna do Tishrei? And our old neighbor called us, like the person who moves into the apartment, and they were like, you know what, this envelope came for you, and it's like a FedEx envelope, and it looks important. So my husband went to the Upper West Side and got it, and it was a check, and it was the exact amount to cover Tishrei. Oh my gosh. Like actually, like that was crazy. Didn't cover Kislev, but right. Also, but Tishrei, we were fine.
Do you think part of it was also like realizing that you have to kind of give up control?
Yeah.
Yes.
you were so used to, or we are so used to controlling every aspect of things, every aspect of our life.
Yeah.
Now it plays out.
Well, it's really hard for me because I feel like that tension that I'm starting to become more aware of, which is like me, and I am really like type A person, like to be honest. Like I like to control, I like to have everything just the way I like it. And but like really I have to show up. So like this Tanya class that I said, she also said we wouldn't do anything without our Nefesh HaBahamis. We wouldn't get up, we wouldn't go to work, we wouldn't eat, we wouldn't drink, we wouldn't, care about how we look, whatever different things. So I thought that's so positive, because to me it's like I still have to show up, and I still have to like, and I feel like Hashem loves cliffhangers, which I don't actually like cliffhangers. It's like, those books as a kid, it was like choose your own adventure. You get, okay, choose that one. But I want to know right now how it's going to work out. I want to know, like, you know what I mean? I want to know exactly whatever stage it is, how it's going to exactly play out, and who it's going to be, and what it's going to be. And I want to know now, like my kitchen is broken. I want to know. And this is a small problem really in the whole scope of things. I think you also become my age and you're like, even if I never fix the kitchen, it's fine. But like, but there's certain things that are not fine, right? Like certain things, especially when that you need you want to get married, you want to have a family, you want to have a job, or these things worked out, But I think, I want to know exactly, I want that control and knowledge. And so, I mean, I've done different things. I'm a really Tehillim person. Like Tehillim is a really important way that I connect to Hashem. Learning, I have a chavrusa now. I have learned parts of Shar B'Tachon. When I feel really, really, really scared, I just say, like I've said Tehillim by the week before, really just to kind of, really, yeah, it's like to just connect. When I when I feel myself like wanting to take control back and wanting to, and I think it's me, and it's so great, oh, you did this. And even in my job, like you could think that you have so much control because I can give girls permission to be out of class or have to be in class, or, you can go home or you can't go home, like as if I have control, but really Hashem is in charge. And so I've ended up learning now lately, actually after I had this experience in the spring was kind of a really, that was when I kind of realized like how much I need to invest in learning and learning Hasidus particularly. And so I that's been really important for me to I have my neighbor, she's actually, that worked out well. She like really learned person. So I was like, after I had this really humbling experience where I learned how little I know, I did a chavrusa. So it's like, however I can just put myself back into a perspective. Yeah. Hashem glasses, exactly. Hashem glasses. Yeah. And even someone told me, because I just spoke about his cautious at this thing. And then, it's always after you're like, wow, why didn't I think of it like that? I thought it was something else so much more. But, it's again, like, I think it's such a funny thing as people, because it's like this, I always teach it in storytelling when I used to teach writing. So like, there's point of view of a story. Do you guys ever do writing? What's a point of view? Yeah, perspective, but also in writing specifically, like in grammar, you say it's like from which point of view is the story? Yeah, first person, second person, third person, right? So like when you have especially first person, which is like how I'm experiencing my life, so like if I was reading a story or a novel written from the I, or I'm only in that person's head the whole time, so it's so limited, you know what I mean? And I think that so whenever I'm in my I space and I'm like, well, I see this and I can't know more, and I'm not even meant to. But then as like the decades are passing, I'm like, oh, wow, I can see the thread sometimes a little more, like connecting, not always and not in every area. But it's funny because someone, basically it's really, I would bring it to you guys. Like someone asked me, don't you feel like your commitment to, she connected it specifically to Shaitl's, but don't you feel like that saved you, kind of like that was your, and I don't know if I think like that. Like I'm still like I'm trying to figure out, I'm on a quest to speak to teachers about like how it works, right? Because I feel very but someone was saying really maybe the Hiskasha started that moment of like, I don't know what I'm getting into. I've never been my own, like I had never been to Crown Heights. Right? Like, and I was like, I'm gonna be Lubavitch. Okay. Like, and no, I did not. I didn't even know about the Rebbe really, and I was from. So I think, now my friends are like, yeah, you had to become Balchulik twice. Okay, really tiring. Just go to Mahon, whichever, all of them. Maya Note, I don't know. But, but I think so for me, it was so, I guess, really interesting. Like if I think about it, like at that moment, is that the moment when I had Iskashas and like suddenly I committed, and then I could see like, okay, I took on Shaitel, I took on Chav Yisrael, I took on Pas Yisrael all the time, I took on all the Chabad minhagim of everything really. Kashrus especially was a different one, different like ways of doing things, also Tars Mishpacha. And I jumped into it like I didn't have Chabad friends. I hadn't gone to seminary here. It's not like I had people like doing the same thing as me. And so then I started to think like, but looking back and feeling like so connected to the Rebbe now and so proud and happy to live on Crown Street now. And so, yeah, well, right. And if I ever want to be put in my place, I have a really dear friend who, when I first moved there, we rented our house. Okay, we were renting it from a Black family that rented it to us, and they had renovated it actually. So like we've never touched it. It's like, wow. That's why I don't have a milchik side in my kitchen. That's why I'm like, it's like this really fancy kitchen that like doesn't have a milchik side, but like whatever. So they rented us this house, and it was $200 more a month than our basement apartment in Manhattan at the time, which is crazy. It was I went from like living in a basement with the garbage outside to like my house, and I remember being like, whoa. But I didn't know anyone, you know, and sometimes people would come over and be like, well, are you really, like, who are you? Where do you come from?
Oh my God.
Like, are you really Chabad? Like, can we eat by you? Like, it was a lot of really stressful things when I first moved here that were hard to. I knew Mrs. Klein and Mrs. Yochebed Beidelman. Mrs.
I
Beidelman.
find it really interesting because what I'm hearing, if I understand your perspective correctly, like from before, how your whole story, like before in school and everything, you were trying to fit in, right? You said like everyone was so fancy, you came to this new school and like fancy cars and yachts and all these things. And coming to Crown Heights was like you doing that all over again, but to yourself.
Yeah.
You don't know anyone. This is new.
Yeah.
You were trying to be like everyone else,
Yeah.
and but you dived in and you did that.
Yeah.
I find that really powerful.
Thank you. And well, Mrs. Beidelman, if you ever want to know how I really felt about my house when I moved there, because I was from the suburbs. My husband grew up in a tiny Manhattan apartment. He's like, we live in the suburbs. We have like a house. I was like, it's not a house. We're not living here for very long. And she's like, and I was like, we're renting, like whatever. We're gonna move somewhere else. And Mrs. Beidelman, I'm like, I love my house. I'm so grateful. We live on Crown Street. She's like, yeah, you keep remembering that. Her kids are in Shluchas where my father lived in Pacific Palisades. So that's how I met her. I became engaged. I took my husband, my now husband, my husband, to meet my father, and her kids were there. So, and she was there by her kids. So that's how we came to meet. Yeah. And yeah. So anyone else have any questions?
Give us such perspective of different stages and how you like live through it, and it's so true. I think so much, even right now, I feel like I yesterday had a really hard day, and I felt like this is the existence.
Yeah.
Like this is it. This is what's happening, and there's no world outside of my where I am now.
But also, I think for myself, like, I mean, I wouldn't want to deny myself the ability to be going through a hard time, which means to say, like, also, even just I'm telling you this, and I'm really excited about this idea that, like, okay, the discomfort. I know my kids have an exercise video. You grow through the hard things, like whatever. Like, I don't know. I mean, I don't think anyone could tell someone else. Like, if my friend calls me, I'm having a really hard time with, my friends mostly have teenage kids, but like, or I can't get my kids to sleep through the night, or I'm having a hard time with whatever. Okay. I don't think, I mean, even for myself, like sometimes I'm in a hard situation sometimes, in different aspects of my life. It's not like, and if I would be like, just grow, like, just remember Hashem is there. Like, I wouldn't want to do that to myself, right? That would be not nice.
Yesterday, my husband's like, oh, this is a great book in case.
Yeah, okay.
But anyways, my husband's like, oh, maybe we should read something. I'm like, I'm not ready yet. At first, I have to like call my sister, vent, and then I can read the book.
Right.
Like, yeah, there's stages.
I had a day like that today, to be quite honest. It was a really shocking day. And it's school, so I won't go into it, but it was a lot. And I was tired and really worn out, and I was really excited to come here. And my daughter had oral surgery yesterday also. So I'm saying, like, but if I was gonna say, oh yeah, like, oh, just grow, like, just, this is a growth opportunity, not even to myself. Like, I think, like, that's a really important point. Like, when I'm in it, it is hard.
So how do you manage being in that moment? It feels so stagnant. You're limited. Okay, Hashem has a brighter future for me. Something's there, but what do you tangibly do in the moment? Like you mentioned, you say Tehillim.
Okay, so
that helps you. But do you have any other examples? Maybe
yeah. Well, I make sure that I eat and I sleep really well.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Or exercise. Like, if I don't take a walk, like this morning I was supposed to walk with somebody, and it was raining. And yesterday I walked with my daughter. It was super cold, and my foot was hurting, and I was complaining, and she's like, all right, like, do you want to go home? I was like, no, I want to do this. But I think that, like, I think, like, that's actually so, it's also very mashechtik, but like my body and my if I'm tired, so I can also just allow myself, like, I'm not gonna expect as much for myself today in some area. If I had a really hard, cranky day, I just woke up on the wrong side or something happened that was really not feeling aligned. So eat, sleep, maybe don't put myself on purpose in extra stressful situations that I could avoid. Like maybe don't do my whole week shopping that day, even if that was on my plan. Get the delivery, like, or just make what I have, or like just easy, like take anything off I could. And I like, for me, journaling is really important. Like I must journal. Since my father passed away, yeah, now they like can never, okay, like whatever. I shouldn't even say this because like when I was a young mother, by the time I put them to bed, I was just like, oh my goodness. But now they like are home late and we have to talk till real late. So like, but that's also nice. It's just different. Like, you know, like whatever. It's good. It's all. But I mean, whenever I could, like, and I'll tell you something. Like, like since my
I'm single, so I could see that I have time. Like I'm like surprised.
well, I think you make time for it. And honestly, like I spend so much time on my phone. And I know that when I'm just like sucked into WhatsApp and like, why did I need to? I mean, it's just, I don't know. My work goes on my phone. So much is run on my phone. And I know for myself, I just made a birthday chata. I'm going to put my phone away like for an hour at home when I come home and sit dinner and just put it away and not look at it. And it really pulls me. I wrote the school production. My husband took it with my phone with him because I was like, I wouldn't put it down. The production chat. It wasn't even like, I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was like, they're telling me feedback on the script as I'm writing it. He's like, I am going to my Gemara share and I'm taking it with me. and you cannot have it. And I was like, huh, okay. I got up, I walked around, I ate a lot of chips, like, so, but I think that's really legitimate. But like when I know that I have had other times in my life where I really put like journaling and my walk. I walked every single day for 2 years. Shabbos, I got up and did it. I just walked to the fountain. I was just a fountain and back. I didn't go, just like something kind of manageable. At one time I could do it like in 30. Oh, sorry, the museum, the Brooklyn Museum.
Oh,
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
I was like the one like across the street.
No, that. But when so since my father passed away, I haven't been able to journal really. And that's also another thing, like that was something that really, I made time for it. I did it and it helped me a lot. And I have really been having a hard time with it. And that's okay. It's okay. And then I'll do something else instead, or I'll, get back to the walks. And that's also, like sometimes something stops working for whatever reason. Like it rained a lot this year and I kept not wanting to walk in the rain. So maybe there's like something else, maybe call a friend, maybe whatever it is for you. Like have to have my favorite coffee, like, and they make my favorite coffee in the morning. Like that's my thing, if I had that, so that's important to me. So I think just really, and to like, yeah.
And being
And they've been
flexible with what
changing
it
it,
exactly.
Yeah.
Flexible with what it is at the time.
Yeah. And so, like for a while, I used to say the Tehillim by the week, and then my mashpeh told me don't do it anymore. It's not right for you. Now say it. Say chitas. Say say just the Tehillim of the month. It's like why don't do that. She was nice about it, like nicer than I'm saying it now. But I think that that's another really amazing thing is like it's just, and then growing up, I don't know if I mentioned this, but my parents lived in a bunch of different places. And so I moved before even that public school. That was probably my second school that I gone to. And then I went to junior high, then I went to a different school, then I went to Andover. And so anyway, so I sometimes occasionally meet with Mrs. Klein and I went to go visit her and I love her. And we were talking about something. She's like, remember when you came to me and you were like, why is the rabbit different from other great tzaddikim, and whatever, we were like having a good laugh over that. But I think like for me also it's been really, really important, and this is just for me, everyone is so different, but for me, having grown up in just so much movement, it's been really, really powerful for me to be here for like 19 years and to just like, and now my new thing is like certain things that I haven't understood, I suddenly am like, you know what, like I can bother to understand them. I can bother to show up in Crown Heights to like invest myself in this place where I live in a very, and not just in school where it's like more comfortable for me. Like I can, so whatever. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for listening. I feel like I'm going on.
Amazing.
Okay.
That was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you. That's really nice. Thank you.
Two parts. Part one is on behalf of the Chassidus. We want to thank you with
Are you serious?
brachas.
You really want to take a walk with this.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
You're welcome. I'm not gonna open all the way just in case somebody's
umbrella.
Wow.
Already married.
let the
That
brachas
is
rain
so-
down. So this is for
I
you.
need this so much. Thank you.
That's
That's
a
really
sturdy
sweet.
wall.
Thank
She's such a
you.
sturdy
It
wall. I
is.
love it.
Thank you for agreeing.
Sure.
And the next piece is that we're gonna take a selfie together.
Oh, nice. Good.
So I'm gonna let me just
What are we doing
this-
Should I unplug this or should I-